Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in the Blue Room at Lucas Oil Stadium. Why do you think they call it the Blue Room? Purdue just lost to Ohio State in overtime in the Big Ten tournament, 87-78. Nice to see some of you here again today, by the way. This is your rap video, obviously following Purdue's one and only Big Ten tournament game. I am trying to keep my voice down because there are folks working here in the Blue Room. I don't want to distract them. So we'll dive right into it. Thank you to our friends at the Purdue Union Club Hotel for your support. Please, next time you plan a trip to campus, keep in mind the Purdue Union Club Hotel. Purdue will not need its hotel room tonight. Another excellent segue. I think they can go home now before they come right back here for the NCAA tournament next week because of this, again, 87-78 overtime loss to Ohio State. Which was delivered courtesy of one of the worst halves Purdue's played all season long. Second half at Miami, first half at Michigan State, those three all right on an even plane, if you ask me. I think that, this team has been remarkably consistent this year for its experience level and its chronological age in simply showing up and not being awful. Just simply showing up. I expected coming into the season that Purdue would have a handful of times this year where they just didn't show up. And they just, as I always say, some days you just get your ass kicked. And I thought that Purdue would have a couple of those this year. And 20 minutes into this game, I thought this was it. Finally, Purdue had just not shown up because that first half was obviously not good. 49 points were the most points Purdue's allowed in a half this year. That was only a part of Purdue's problem. The other parts being that they shot okay from three, but they missed a bunch of free throws and they missed a lot of opportunities at the rim. Just a really, really messy half. Just a really disjointed performance in that first half from a team that had been pretty good all season long at playing together and, always competing and always being good enough, to win. Perhaps not always playing their best basketball right away. Illinois, Rutgers, games like that come to mind. Iowa a little bit. Obviously, the Michigan State in the first half at Michigan State was a disaster. But I thought Purdue had graduated out of some of that stuff, and apparently they had not. To hear them tell it after the game regarding their defensive issues, it was simply communication. Largely communication, I should say, which doesn't really stand to reason after all these games when you had been trending relatively upward from a defensive perspective lately. Your chemistry should be the best it's been all season long. Why it wasn't, I'm not really sure. But they said that things were much better in the second half, and the results were what they were because Ohio State in the second half was 6 of 26 from the floor. I know they were 5 of 6 in overtime, but Purdue did a much better job defensively in the second half, and that's what gave them a chance. I think that, I said this before the game, that I think there's an advantage in these events, these Big Ten tournaments, these conference tournaments in general. If you play a game the day before, I think you're warmed up. If you don't, I think that maybe that can be a little bit of a challenge. I know playing fewer games to win a title is the preferred way to do so. But I think in terms of that first game, one team is playing against a team that had played the day before. I think there's a little bit of an advantage there for the team that played the day before. Obviously, Ohio State played Minnesota yesterday. They were used to this venue, whatever else. They might have hit some kind of rhythm. They might have, just been warmed up. And I think I'm now on, if I were a college basketball team, I think I'd now be on team single bye instead of team double bye for that reason. Because if you just want to win that first game, I think you have a little bit of advantage if you played the day before. Now, when it gets 4 games into the weekend, then all of a sudden, you're dealing with some complications there. But I think that there can be an advantage in that. I'm not making an excuse for Purdue. I'm not even saying that had anything to do with tonight. I'm just saying that generally speaking, that that first game gives you a little bit of an opportunity to build up a little momentum, get loose, whatever it may be, get used to the environment. I don't know, but the tale of two halves for Purdue was pretty considerable here, and Ohio State did the same thing, but the first half was their good half, and I don't know what all went into that. Purdue's been more consistent than this, but I just thought it bared mentioning. I thought Travion Williams, again, this was his sort of blueprint game for this season, where he wasn't great in the first half. He said sometimes he slow starts. It's more about him adjusting to how he's being guarded. I'm sure that's part of it, but there were also a lot of opportunities he had at the basket too, where he just didn't finish shots that he normally makes. But then he was brilliant in the second half. Once again, he was good in overtime to start. I'll have to go back and watch it to see about the blockouts that might have been missed. I thought a very ominous tone for overtime was set by Purdue's decision-making to start the overtime. I thought Eric Hunter's turnover was unfortunate. A really bad tone to set there in overtime. I'll have to go back and watch that. It was him and Williams in a pick and roll. Don't know if Hunter made a great decision there. Again, I'll have to go back and watch it. But obviously, that turnover was not how Purdue wanted to start the overtime. And then Travion Williams getting the turnover and then dribbling down and missing the runner. Purdue really could have used an established possession there. Made the most of that possession. I don't know if that was a great decision either. So that was an ominous tone set for overtime and whatnot. But otherwise, Travion Williams was absolutely brilliant. He said after the game that he didn't, express some modest frustration that he came out of the game in overtime. Painter said he thought he was tired based off the missed block out that I don't even remember, but I'm sure it occurred. There were some offensive rebounding issues in overtime too, as there were throughout this whole game for Purdue, but also the play he made in transition to shoot that runner and miss that runner must have given Painter the idea that he was fatigued, and obviously Zach Edey's an effective player too. That was Painter's explanation of all of that, but I don't think Purdue scored another field goal after Travion Williams came out. He did come back in, but I don't think Purdue scored another field goal. What if that had anything to do with it? I don't know, but I just thought I'd mention that. A lot of this slop, from this game that led to this result, I think, for Purdue, you just hope it's out of your system now. You would hope that it makes you hyper aware of this stuff going in the NCAA tournament. If you want my honest opinion here, I think Purdue's going into the NCAA tournament with some alarm bells here. I've said that before and been completely wrong. I thought they had alarm bells sounding 2 years ago, and they damn near went to the Final Four. But I think the offensive rebounding for opponents is getting a little bit excessive. I think Ohio State was much quicker to the ball to start this game, and that was a big deal. The turnovers, it's just something that Purdue has to be constantly all over, because that can rear its ugly little gremlin head at any point in time and change games. And as I said before, those two turnovers, or the turnover and then the shot by Williams in transition that essentially was a turnover, to start overtime, set a really ominous tone for the extra session and probably squandered whatever momentum Purdue had coming out of the second half. That's what I'm getting at with the turnovers. Obviously, the volume of turnovers throughout full games is a big deal, but the bigger deal is when and how when they're happening and how much impact they have. And I think that was a golden example right there. I would tell you how many turnovers Purdue had, but I don't know the box score. So it's hard when I've got this window open videoing this to go back to my PDF. So I can't do that. For all I know, they only had those two turnovers. I don't know. I know they didn't, so never mind. But Purdue's got to be all over the turnover issue. That will get them beat in the NCAA tournament if they're not careful. This can all go poof now. This can all come down to one block out or one turnover, and that's the nature of single elimination basketball, as Purdue found out today. 15 to 27 at the foul line, too many turnovers, too many defensive breakdowns, and any one of those things goes differently. The butterfly effect takes hold. Maybe you win this game. So this should be a stark reminder, a harrowing reminder for Purdue of how little the margin for error is in March. I don't know how much the Big Ten tournament matters. Purdue's in the tournament. Purdue's going to be a 4 seed, a 5 seed at worst, whatever it may be. Most likely, who cares? If you don't win the Big Ten tournament, it's not that big a deal. But you'd still like to win. You always should want to win anyway. But Purdue has to hope here that it can get better off of this going into the more important games. Purdue has to hope now that things get recalibrated a little bit. They get back to their winning ways after this sort of game. Purdue needs more from its juniors. That was a big issue here tonight. I think Sasha Stefanovic goes 0 for 4. It's not, when he's not scoring, it's not the end of the world, but he didn't score. Eric Hunter, I think had some turnovers that Purdue cannot afford the rest of the month. Purdue needs to take care of the basketball. That is its MO. That needs to be its MO anyway. And I think obviously guard play is central to that. Obviously Eric Hunter is not the extent by himself of a turnover issue, but I thought he had a couple today that were regrettable. And when that's coming from veterans, you expect a little bit more from them. Travion Williams obviously was brilliant in the second half, but the first half wasn't his finest hour. I didn't walk away from this game thinking that Aaron Wheeler played poorly, but I looked at the box score, and say what you will about the plus minus. Okay, sometimes it's BS, sometimes there's validity to it, but also sometimes there are numbers so gaudy that they can't be BS. Aaron Wheeler, minus 23. Mason Gillis, plus 8. No other Purdue player in a game where you were down 18 at half had a plus minus of more than negative 10. If that. They all had single-digit plus minuses one way or the other. Aaron Wheeler was minus 23. So I don't know really what to make of that, but that's not a good look. Regardless what your opinion is on the plus minus. That's your junior class there. And that's, I'm not necessarily calling them out. I'm just saying they have been as good as the freshmen have been, the juniors have been a really solid foundation for this team all year long. And, if Purdue's going to win in the NCAA tournament, it has to win the way it's won all year. And it has to start with those 4 guys. And obviously Travion Williams was a huge part of the solution after halftime, for sure. But, Purdue needs its veterans, the guys who've played in NCAA tournament games before, the guys who played in a game that damn near took you to the Final Four, the guys who've been through all this before. These are the guys you need playing well in March. These are the guys at least you need being solid in March. And I kind of watched this game, and I don't know if I necessarily saw solid all the time. You don't have to be great. You don't have to be good, but you have to be solid. And there's no other way I can put it. But those guys have to be better than they were today if Purdue wants to stay in Indianapolis for more than a couple days here. So that's what I've got here from the Blue Room in Lucas Oil Stadium. I can't remember what else I wanted to say. It must not have been that important. I apologize for the noise in the background. Illinois and Rutgers have been very inconsiderate. They did not even entertain my request that they just keep it down for a while I do this video. So that's what I got. I'm going to stop talking now. For goldenblack.com, this is Brian Neubert from Purdue's 87-78 overtime loss to Ohio State here in Lucas Oil Stadium. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. We'll talk to you again from some venue somewhere in the state of Indiana next week after Purdue plays whoever the hell they're going to play. So we'll find out Sunday and let you know then. Thanks, everybody.